Hello, welcome back to Move Ahead with Dahlia. On today's podcast, my guest is Freeman Brown. He's a motivational speaker and businessman. And I had the pleasure of meeting Freeman at an event, a community event on May 15. It was set at the Kelvin Park Senior Center, and it was through a program called Ready, Set, Live. And Freeman, I just want to say, I mentioned it to you when we met, how impactful your story is. And I needed to have you on this podcast so you can share that. So thank you for being here.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here, Dahlia. I really appreciate you having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'd love for you to start by giving us a little bit of your background growing up in Chicago.
Okay, so growing up here in Chicago, it's a great city, and early on, I'm one of six, actually one of nine, but my dad remarried years later. But at home with my parents, my biological parents, they six of us at home. So I come from a pretty big family.
That's a big family.
Yeah, a pretty big family, 3 boys, 3 girls, and it's the thing that made me into there's several things that made me into what I am, what that shaped and molded me into the person I am today. But it's certain things that happened, growing up here in Chicago that that I like to speak about that that affected my life in a great way, and hopefully that I could really, I would say really, that impacted my life, and I would say really help to give advice and to inspire and motivate young, the youth, today, because there's a lot of things that happen here in the city that I think that if they have given some instruction and direction, it'll help them navigate a lot better, because sometimes in most cases you have to learn as you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know from the story you told at the community event that you went through many, many, many challenges
Yes.
in your youth.
Yes.
And unfortunately, some of those challenges turned into situations that were very difficult for you. After, I'm going to say around the age of 20, right? Around that age. So share your family story first.
Okay. So, as I said, I came from a pretty big family. Both parents were at home. Both my mom and my dad were at home. I was at home. All of us was at home with my parents. And I would say things early on in my childhood, I would say the elements, a lot of the neighborhood that we lived in particular, was pretty crime wise. There was a lot of crime, but it was a lot of families also. Families were normal, it was typical, but being in an environment where people don't have people, it's a working class neighborhood, but at the same time people don't have very much. So at home, I would say my parents, it was very volatile. It was a really, really, really tough environment to be in, because although they loved us, they fought a lot. And I noticed, very early on, that, there's a lot of fighting at home. So personally, growing up and seeing myself, I didn't have very much confidence. I didn't have, I didn't think very highly of myself. Going to school, not having the best of clothes sometimes. My parents did the best that they could,
Right.
with what they had. And, sometimes I would have to put safety pins in my pants to cover up the holes in my pants. Or I would have sometimes not the best of shoes, or not have a haircut and things like that. And as a kid, that's kind of, you think about those type of things, and it kind of messes with, your self-esteem and confidence. I have a birthmark on my forehead, and I'm confident with it now, and it hasn't stopped me from achieving things in life now. But as you're 9, 10 years old, you look different, you feel different.
Yes.
So it affected me a great deal. The violence at home, it escalated to a point where my parents they ended up splitting in say 1981.
So how old were you around that time?
11. I was
11.
11.
Yeah, that's pretty tough, right?
And so, my dad, he's a steel worker, and he worked at a steel mill. But things happen between my parents, that I'm too young to even know what's going on between them. All I
Yeah.
know is, it's a lot of fighting and physical altercations and stuff taking place. And my siblings and we're there seeing it front and center.
Yeah.
And they end up. Long story short, they end up splitting in 1981. My older brother was there. He was a big influence to me as well. He was my older brother, 6 years older than I am, and so he was the neighborhood. Everybody knew us, and it was back in the day when everybody kind of knew each other.
Right.
And so my older brother, he was very popular. He was very popular, and I would say one of the biggest incidents that happened that I noticed early on. I would say about 11. My brother, he was dating a girl, and my brother was a a big time gang member on the South Side, and in particular the neighborhood that we lived in, and it was dating a girl, and they were at a park, and an incident happened. The girl he was dating, she happened to have a child, and I think my brother was like maybe 15 or 16 at the time. She was like 15 or 16, and the girl had a child. It wasn't my older brother's child; it was her child. But he was dating the girl, so they go to the park. She was physically violent. You know what I mean? She wouldn't get her way, so she would, punch my brother. He was taught not to hit girls, so he didn't respond. And this was like the first big incident that I witnessed that kind of it impacted me in a big way in my thought process. And so they were at a park one day, and she was became angry, with my older brother, and she went to slap him in the face. So I guess this particular time my brother hit her back or whatever, and what happened was, since my brother was in a big gang, and the gang he was in was pretty big, and he was pretty popular. The girl went and made up this story that my brother had, struck the baby, and that kind of saying that kind of thing would invoke emotion in anybody. So people are thinking like, what kind of animal would hit a baby? But it wasn't true. So the girl's uncle was a big time gang member. He was a big time gang leader in the opposition. So what the youngins call now, they say ops. So it stirred up a real big thing because she wouldn't have said that my brother hit the baby when in fact he did not. So what really impacted me and made me terrified was it stirred up a big thing, and basically a war was about to start in the neighborhood that we lived in because this girl made up this big story that she fabricated, and they ended up issuing, I don't know what they call it now, but back then they call it a SOS, which means a shoot on sight. So that means when you see him, my brother, when you see him, don't ask no questions, shoot him. And I just remember being, I'm 11 at the time, and I'm like terrified,
This
thinking
is your
about
older brother.
my older
Yeah.
brother. I looked up to him. He was in the martial arts and everything. So, and he was really good with his hands. My uncle was a amateur boxer, so he trained my older brother really good. He was really good with his hands and feet, and I just adored my older brother. Just looked up to him, and I'm thinking like, what's going to happen? So, when that happened, I'm finding that out. The reason I found that out is because a lot of my older brothers, I was too young, of course, to hang out with my older brother. So a lot of his friends, I hung out with their younger brothers. They were my age. So streets started talking. Rumor got around the neighborhood about the situation. And I remember my parents. It was a scary time and moment. My parents ended up, clearing us out of the house. They sent me over to my aunt's house. My aunt's house. They sent my sisters and my other siblings over to another aunt's house, and everybody just kind of, scattered and left the house for a little while. It's like
Wow.
like a 3 week period.
It was a big disruption.
Yes, yes, it was huge. It was just like a time. It was just a moment that I'll never forget.
Very scary.
Very scary. It was like, what's going to happen. It was meantime. It was guys coming riding by the house. They had guns, and my brother, he had, about 150, 200 guys over to our house, watching the house, and it was a big time. So the turning point in all of that was my uncle Herman, rest in peace. He was well known because he was an amateur. He was pretty good at boxing years ago, and he uh, he was well known for being a stand up guy in the neighborhood. This is my dad's old younger brother, and everybody knew Herman, and which is my older brother. He found out about the story, and he knew the uncle of the girl, the guy, the big time gang chief or whatever, and he knew the guy. So my uncle went and sat down and talked to the young lady's uncle that made up the story. Sat down with him, and the girl, she confessed that she made a story up. She was just mad, and she made up this story. She confessed, and they apologized to my family. My family and their family came together and kind of squashed the beef or whatever.
Diffused it.
Diffused it, and we all came back home, and but so many other things happened. That was like the early years, but things, more stuff happened after that kind of like I said, kind of shaped me into my thought process and how I thought.
Yeah.
As a
So
kid.
I know you mentioned your brother was a big influence, but unfortunately, it wasn't a positive influence.
Right, right, right,
Right?
right. And some, I would say, in some ways, not.
In some ways. Okay. And, but I know that in your journey, there were people that were important positive influences in your life. I know you mentioned in the story a Mr. Martin, who I know we're going to get to that part of the story, which is such a touching, really touching part of everything that you've been through, and almost like what people say, like a light bulb moment went, into your mind during a certain situation in your life. Can you share once you had, come out as a teenager to, meet friends, and how did that shape your teenage life?
That's a really good question. I would say it. So what happened was, shortly after, I would say about a year after the incident happened with my older brother. So my parents had split up. So my dad is not there, as often as he was when he was living with us.
Right.
And I'll say about a year later, my older brother, he ended up, leaving. He just left, and that impacted me a lot because these are the two most influential men at the time that I would say that I looked up to.
Yeah.
I saw my dad. I watched my dad. I would watch him. Wear nice suits and how he tied his tie and how he shaved and how he would put his hard hat on to go off to the steel mill where he worked.
Yeah.
And my older brother, aside from him being a gang member, I didn't look at him as a gang member. I just looked at him as my older brother.
As a big brother.
Yeah, as my big brother, and so he protected us a lot. So those two, my dad, he moved away. He moved into a new the area we lived in. It was the street was 93rd and Greenwood on the south side. My dad, he ended up moving to 4950 South State in the Robert Taylor housing projects.
Okay.
So whenever I wanted to see him, he wasn't absent in my life. I was always accessible to him. I just catch the bus to see him. But those things, I would say, impacted me a great deal,
Absolutely.
as a young man, because now I'm feeling like the structure is gone,
Yes.
nobody to kind of check me if I get out of line, or
Yes.
I'm like, just kind of, I would say I just kind of gravitated to the street culture.
Yeah.
All the hard tough guys, and At 11, 12 years old, I would say I was what they call nowadays, I was outside.
Yeah. And your mom, she worked.
Well, she worked, but she worked part time, so she wasn't,
She
she
wasn't
wasn't
there
exactly.
to, you know, check everything you were doing.
And so that kind of opened up the floodgates for me to
Yeah.
even, it gave me more incentive to say, okay, nobody's watching. So I started noticing certain things happening. So then at the same time, it seemed like when my parents split up, we struggled while my dad was there, but we struggled more when he was not there. So it led me to start thinking to be, nobody told me to do this. Nobody, even though we didn't have very much, my mother was not influencing me to do wrong. In fact, she influenced me to do the right thing. She would tell us to do the right thing, but I just thought, when we're struggling and it's not food in the refrigerator all the time, then I got to do something. I got younger siblings, they're saying they're hungry. So I started doing things like, stealing and doing the wrong thing. I don't know. I just thought to myself, I'm like, okay, nobody's coming to help. This is what I was thinking at 11 or 12.
Wow.
No help is not coming.
Yeah.
So I need to do something. So I started, stealing out of stores, walk in, get groceries, put them in my pocket, walk out. Now I've got bologna sandwiches, and or if the tappy apple guy would pull up to the corner store, the neighborhood corner store, I'm just like, okay, me and my friends, we would just wait till the guy would take the dolly on the inside, and we would just, time them. Somebody watch the door, and we just take boxes of taffy apples. And sometimes my siblings would have taffy apples for dinner. But then, I would say, so that's 11 and 12. Now I'm heading into teenage years. Now I'm getting accustomed to doing things, to bringing food in, and kind of beating them. My siblings are looking up to me, and then ultimately that led to me, I would say, by the time eighth grade, I say eighth grade, 14, 14 years old. We living in a different neighborhood. We living on 105th and Edbrook in Roseland. They call it, it's referred to as the Wild Hundreds.
Oh,
Well, they say the mispronunciation is the Wild Hunnets. This is what it's referred to as. And so now we living on 105th and Edbrook. Now I'm a full blown gang member, and it's pretty. Now I'm really in. I'm getting popular. I would say eighth grade. I'm getting really popular, and so by the time high school came, I ended up going to a high school where the gang that I was in was not the majority; it was the minority, and so the gang that I was in was the minority. So we had to be, we had to hold, well, what they would say, hold it down, which would mean we had to stand firm on a lot of things and really look out for each other. So I'm with a certain group, and I would say my freshman and sophomore year is, I'm popular. So, and then it's getting pretty wild because I'm fighting every other day, you know. Leaving out of school, I'm fighting every other day because you had to get to the bus stop and walk out of the front door and walk to the bus stop. Sometimes, it's people out there waiting on you. And I'm talking about big groups. It wasn't, a
was
couple
it
of
one or
guys.
two people?
No, it was not. It was a lot. So, that I don't know why this struck a nerve with me, but in my mind, you know, even though the circumstances what they were, I had been through so much prior to that, just growing up, just surviving and things like that, learning
Right.
how to survive and keep food, and just sometimes it wasn't heat in the house and things like that. I'd been through so much. I had become stubborn and just defiant and combative, and just like, well, I didn't want to leave the school. I wasn't going to go anywhere, even though we was outnumbered and things like that. I didn't even think about transferring or nothing like that. I just wanted to keep going. So one day, I would say around my sophomore year, I think I was either had just turned 16 or was about to turn 16. Me and some friends of mine, we would all go up to 95th Street in at the L station on 95th Street. And up there at 95th during that time, you know, all the schools were just about in the city were passing through there, people going home from different schools and things like that. So the group of guys that I was with, we would go and hang out at the train station. That's where everybody hung out at, the train station. This particular day, we get up there, and it's a ton of us. I would say, when I say a ton of us, I mean teenage, high school,
Yeah.
and this particular day, it was four, including myself, four of myself and my friends. We at the train station, and it's like 100 guys, you know, over 100 guys. But you know, we just standing there and just hanging out, and it just escalated into you know, a big brawl. I'm talking to somebody, hanging out. Next thing I know, I look over, my friend is fighting a group of guys. So I run over to jump in, and then more of them come, and then my other two friends, we all jump in. So we like in the fight for our lives. It was just like at a crowded, just imagine a crowded train station with not only all the high school people going, you know, coming and going through there, but rush hour, people working, coming in and going to work. So it's like rush hour time. It's flooded.
Yeah,
It's a
the
ton of
commuters
people.
are in and out.
Yes, yes. So it was crowded, and then so the fight breaks out. It's a big brawl. People are getting hit. We hitting people. They hitting us. It just goes out of control. People were throwing stuff. Pool balls was being thrown. Sticks, nightsticks. It was just like a melee. It was just like it was almost like a teenage riot. You know what I mean? But it was just four of us. So we're fighting. We're going back and forth. And this is. I mean, it seemed like it might have been for a minute, but it just seemed like it was just forever.
Yeah.
And we're getting tired, and it matters. And mind you, it's in the dead of winter. But so the fight spills out into the street where the buses are, and you know, we kind of break apart from them. So it's four of us, and we surrounded, and then so they jump us again, and somebody went to grab one of my friends, and a group of guys, they went to grab one of my buddies, and they're gonna throw him over the overpass to the expressway.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And so throughout all the confusion and all the chaos, it was just super chaotic. It was like a moment that it wasn't even real, but it was. So through all the confusion and chaos, we trying to grab my friend, and you know, it was just so much happening at one time when and within a split second, a gunshot rang out, and it was loud. It echoed. When that happened, everybody kind of dove for cover, and people screaming and running. It was just total chaos. So what happened next is when the smoke cleared and everybody jumped up and got to their feet, we grabbed my friend and we all just took off running. We with no specific direction. Everybody's just like running, you know, because of gun. So we're running down the street, and it's snow, so we're getting tired. You know, it's a lot of snow. It's like up to our knees, so we're getting tired. So we get to this specific street. It's on like King, no, not King Drive, but like Cottage Grove. I think it was like a Burger King or a restaurant, fast food restaurant. So we couldn't run no more. So we run inside the Burger King or whatever, and somebody yelled out, you know, turn around. We turn around, and it seemed like the entire train station
was inside the restaurant.
They chased us and ran into the restaurant with us. Like, I mean, when we walked in, to show you how fast things can change, just like when we walked in, it was quiet. It was people sitting there eating. You had the people behind the counters. They're, taking orders, and it was so quiet. And we know what just happened. So we just, we trying to, look for somewhere to go and maybe go out the back door. And within a split second, they, that same crowd that was at the train station, they came in right behind us, and it's like all, what, as they would say, all hell just kind of broke loose. And so, they come in and they run in and they rush in, and we're fighting in the restaurant. So now we're fighting in the restaurant. Now we're behind the counter with the workers. I mean, they're diving behind the counters. We grabbing them and diving, throwing them back over the counter. Chairs are being thrown. It's just total chaos all over again. And, now we're trying to maintain and hold our own, just trying to figure out a way how we can get out of this and maybe get out the back door or something like that. But ain't no way they're not letting us go because there's so many of them and just so few of us. So we fighting for our lives. All of a sudden, the door, I would say about 2 or 3 minutes in, the door back there where we were, it kicks in, it kicks open. One of my buddies, he grabs one of the chairs that was thrown back there with us, and he kicks the door back, closed, and puts the chair, barricades the door with the chair. My buddy, one of my other buddies, a hammer comes over the counter and hits him in the head and splits his head open. So his blood, it's just like, you wouldn't believe that. It was a mess. It was a big mess, like something like you would see in a movie.
Yeah.
And so when the door kicked over the second time, the police come in with their guns drawn and they make us, they take us in the back. And so they talking about, the manager to the restaurant, he's telling them that, hey, those guys were chasing these guys, and, he's kind of vouching for us and, speaking up for us. And throughout all the confusion, the police, they take us in the back, they rough us up, and they talking about this gun. Well, I could say at that moment, I was not aware of the gun. I heard that the only thing I knew about the gun was the gunshot.
Right.
That I heard the gunshot just like everybody else. But they were pressing about this gun. So they take us in the back, they rough us up, they looking for this gun. And so they handcuff us, they handcuff us, they take us down to a police station. It's on the south side, like 70, maybe 70 something in Racine. I can't remember the exact address. They take us to the police station. They interrogate us, split us up, asking us questions. I don't know nothing about the gun. I heard the gunshot. So after they interrogate us and asking us questions, they take us all to our, the booking room where they book you and write all the information where they book people. So they got us all handcuffed to a wall, sitting on the bench. It's a long bench, and they got us handcuffs, and they got these rings on the wall, these big rings, and they got the handcuffs locked in the ring, so everybody's locked and handcuffed to the wall. And so at that moment, now this changed the whole complexion of everything that happened. During that time, they wanted the gun. They were asking for the gun. But at that moment, sergeant walks in. He's high ranking. He might have been a sergeant or a captain or something like that. But he's like, that's when we found out that somebody had been shot. At that moment, up until then, I'm thinking it was just a fight and somebody shot. I thought it was one of them maybe shooting. So we found out we were being charged with a host of charges. We being charged with attempted murder, aggravated battery, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, gang activity, and just a host of other charges that if I thought about it, I could probably think about it.
Oh my gosh. So a question I have about that, and I in your story, I don't know if I heard the answer, but was it one of the people in your group that had the gun?
Yes, I found out, but I found that out. Yes, I found that out
Later.
And it was just a moment like kind of frozen in time.
Yeah.
Because, I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew being in the gang was wrong. And I could say maybe then that I signed up for the fighting. I didn't sign up for the gun. I didn't know, I wasn't aware, to be honest with you, I wasn't aware of the gun.
Right.
So, they're interrogating about and asking about the gun, but I can't say nothing about the gun because I honestly didn't know nothing about the gun. And they told us what we were being charged with. So they booking us, fingerprinting us. They take us to fingerprinting. But also, the guy was in the, I guess the person that had been shot, he had got shot through the eye. And
Oh.
when he got shot through the eye, he was in, I think, intensive care, something where it was close to, they were saying that if he was basically on an operating table, they're going to remove this bullet from his eye, and basically they were saying that he was in fighting for his life, and that if he died, we were going to be 702. Now, I'm I'm not used to this, so I didn't know the terms and phrases, and I found out. I'm like asking around what is 702, and the captain, he was more than happy to tell us, y'all going to be charged as adults. That's what 702 being 702 is. And I just remember my heart just dropping to the floor.
Yeah.
And the thing about it was, Dahlia, it was more, to be honest with you, that moment was scary, but nothing was more scary than, I just remember telling the sergeant, the captain, whoever he was, like, hey, listen, they say we got to call your parents and this and that, and I just remember telling them, hey, let's just, whatever you do, please do not call my mother, because I had a high. My mother did not play. She did not play. She was serious business, and I was more afraid of her than I was anybody. And that the gravity of that situation. So it just kind of went from there. It ended up being, we were charged with those charges. So now we're facing attempted murder and a host of other charges, serious charges. And then so they book us and they take us to a holding cell. And it was a lengthy process because we ended up going to court for almost a year. They ended up finding us guilty. I ended up receiving 36 months in the state Department of Corrections, and all four of us were found guilty, sent upstate. The thing about it is, being on those buses, they you get shackled. You're in these shackles from your wrist to your feet. You can barely walk. You're on a bus full of other people that have been found guilty and sent upstate. You get to the Department of Corrections, and that's another thing, that is something that's an experience, especially when you haven't never had to deal with that before.
Yeah, well, I think when you say when I heard your story about once you were charged and went upstate, I think about the movies and shows where they share these experiences for teenagers, like Scared Straight, right, where they put the kids in and send them to a prison so they could see the life that unfortunately the prisoners are living through. And you shared some of that in your story, and it's really impactful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just to add an extension on what you just said, it really, because we wasn't charged as an adults, but even the youth, when you get sent to the youth Department of Corrections, it's just like the same thing.
Same situation.
Same setup.
Yeah.
Same setup. So we pull up to the facility that you're at, the compound, and it's like the way I can describe it's like a great big fort with brick walls and towers as tall as the eye can see. And then with those towers, they're just like gates so many feet up in the air and they all reinforced with razor wire. There's razor wire everywhere. And it looks like a penitentiary. It looks like, you know what I mean? It looks like jail. It looks like you ain't never getting out. Yeah. Especially when you have never experienced, being a teenage, knucklehead, I would say. I wasn't ready for that. Yeah. But being able to survive and my instincts and Being a tough kid, kind of, growing up the way I grew up, kind of nothing prepared me for that, but it did come in handy by having certain survival instincts and things like that, because a lot of things happen in those places that you know people probably wouldn't imagine. I wouldn't advise any young person to be involved in crime or anything like that, or guns or gangs, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I've raised, my husband and I have raised two sons, and one of the things that my parents or my mom would tell me growing up, and I told them growing up, was, you know, you are who you spend the most time with, right? And unfortunately, sometimes that can't be helped in the certain neighborhoods you're growing up in, which in your situation, of course, you were out spending time with friends who unfortunately were involved in gangs, and it just snowballed, right?
I wasn't an innocent bystander. I was in it too.
Right,
You
right,
know.
right. And that's the more important part, was that in your experience, you took responsibility. Can you share some of the stories, or at least who impacted you when you were held upstate? Who helped you see the light so you can improve yourself?
Okay, that's really good. So the most impactful person he ended up being person was a guy that I looked up to. He was the history teacher, and his name was Mr. Martin. Real cool guy, and so I'm in there, and before I even got to the point where I wanted to change, I'm going in. I got the mindset of the tough guy fighting all the time. Well, I wouldn't say all the time, but I'm fighting often. Just for respect. And when you're in the Department of Corrections, it's it's like, I would say, anything can happen at any given time.
Well, and you mentioned you had your survival instincts, right? So you had to have that shield to protect yourself
Yep.
there.
Yep. And because anything could happen. You could be the coolest, most respected person in a Department of Corrections, or in prison, or in jail, but somebody's always going to test you. And there's so much going on. That's the thing that I want to put emphasis on. Is nothing cool about being in jail. It's nothing cool about being locked up. It's not nothing cool about doing crime. But at this point, I'm getting to a point where I say to myself, I'm like, so what happened was I ended up getting into a friend of mine, one of the same friends of mine that got found guilty with me on the charges. He got into a fight. I jumped in, and they said that we were trying to. The correctional officers said, we got charged while we were in there. They charged us, sent us to confinement. Said we tried to start a riot. So they ended up. We ended up going before a board. They gave us 6 months set time. Set time is the time that they add on to the time that you already have. So I get into another fight, another fist fight. I get another 3 months added on, and then another 3 months. And so I'm getting about like a year set time just for acting up, fighting, and just So my buddy, he ended up going into a GED program, and so I'm not doing nothing. I'm in the gym, where all the trouble was at. I'm in the gym. I'm out in the rec center where where you play ball and things like that. But this is where all the trouble was happening, and I'm all in the mix of it. And I'm seeing my buddy. He's kind of clamping down and changing, and in his GED program, he's studying. They ended up giving us we ended up being bunkies, cellies, and and I'm watching him study, and he's like really kind of bogging down on his studying and being disciplined and things like that.
So he's the first one that was the positive
I
influence.
think so. You know what? You're 100% right.
Yeah.
So I'm asking him questions about it, and he's like, "Yeah, man. This the GED program. You can go talk to so and so, and just try to get in, man, because we need to get up out of here. And the only way we're gonna get set time is if you considered if you could get considered a trustee." And being a trustee, that means your behavior patterns is good. They'll give you a job and things like that. So I'm like, okay, that was like right up my alley. I'm like getting time set, getting time cut. That'll be right. That's something that I'm interested in. So I said, okay, I go. So I go and I talk to Mr. Martin, was the history teacher, and he's pretty cool. And because you end up going, they end up sending. You have to go to school while you're there, but the GED program is something else. So I talked to Mr. Martin, and I tell Mr. Martin, like, look, man, I wanna get my high school diploma, my GED. And he tells me, hey, well, you got to go and talk to this other teacher. I can't remember his name. He told me, hey, but you got to, keep your cool while you're talking to him, because he's not, he's not having it. You can't talk to him any old kind of
Oh,
way.
is he the one that rejected you?
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember you mentioning
Yes.
that.
So this other teacher, he's like a tough guy, like a Joe Clark, lean on me kind of guy. He didn't play. Mr. Martin was really cool, and so I go. And I go and try to talk to him. I'm still a hothead, young hothead at the time, and he just flat out just told me no. Like, I don't want, you're gonna come in here, you're gonna disrupt the class, you're gonna be in there fighting, no, I don't want you in here. It's quiet in here. You're gonna bring all this chaos in there. And I was heated. I went back to my bunk, probably threw some things around in my bunk, and frustrated. So I go back to the history class the next day, and I talk to Mr. Martin. And Mr. Martin said, hey, man, you got to keep cool. You got to be cool, man. You got to calm yourself down. Go talk to him again. So I took Mr. Martin's advice. I go talk to the teacher again, the GED program teacher. He's like, nope, because you ain't changed your attitude. You ain't changed your, I can already tell. You ready to fight now because I told you no. And he was right.
He sensed that vibe in you.
Yep.
He was like, no,
I wasn't ready.
We need a better energy.
Yep. And so, when he's telling me this, I ain't really thinking. I'm just like,
You're thinking you want this.
Yes. And so, at the time, so I go back to my room, to my bunk, to my cell. I probably trash the room again, and I ended up calling my mother and talking to her about it, and she told me, like, listen, if you really want to change, you got to calm down and, do what's right. You got to change the way you're thinking, the way you're acting, because you're not, or else you're going to end up getting, more time than you already got. And I listened to her. So I calmed down. I went and talked to Mr. Martin again. He said, man, you don't want to turn, a 3-year sentence that you got into 10.
Right.
So I took his advice. I went back and talked to the guy the third time. And I told him, I said, I promise I'm not gonna be fighting. I'm gonna listen to what you're teaching. I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna study, and I'm gonna apply myself. And this time he looked at me and he said, you know what, I'm gonna give you a shot. But if you mess it up, you out. And I didn't want to mess up. I didn't want to mess up. And so I ended up taking the test, and it was like really cold in the classroom. No excuse, but it was like really cold in the classroom. It was like guys had gloves on and stuff, and I really couldn't concentrate. I was really concentrating on how cold it was instead of concentrating on the actual test and getting through it. And I didn't pace myself well. I ended up missing. I failed it. I ended up missing and failed it. And I wanted to give up. I was frustrated. And they told me that I can go back and do it again. And I think the class came back up maybe 5 or 6 months later, and I retook it and I passed it. Yep. And
That's awesome.
yeah.
And how did that change you?
Well, it gave me the sense, and like I said, it was so many things, self-esteem issues that I had. It was things that where I didn't believe in myself. I was really never encouraged. Growing up, I didn't really think highly of myself. Growing up.
Yeah.
So but doing that was huge for me because
Yeah.
it allowed me to start really, self-reflecting and seeing at that time that I could do something.
Yeah.
I started believing in myself.
That was a stepping stone, right?
Yeah.
In the process of you believing in yourself
Yep.
just a little bit more.
Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more.
That's awesome. So you got your GED, and what was the next phase of that part of your life?
So the way it was set up, I don't know how it's set up now, but back then the way it was set up is like once a person uh, does not pass, you can go back, of course, and retake it. But once you pass the test, you're pretty much done with school. You don't have to go to school anymore. So
Okay.
I could either get a job in there in the kitchen, get a job in the gym doing laundry, or basically get back in trouble. And I wasn't going to get back in trouble. So I went to Mr. Martin. Went back to Mr. Martin, the history teacher, the cool guy that gave me the good advice. He always gave me good advice, and he always treated me like a young man. He would always say, "Hey, man, you can do it," because I told you can do it. He always had an upbeat, positive. He was tough and stern, but he was like a lighthearted, and he was a jokester. But I just remember asking him one day, like, man, what can I do next? And he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to start working on getting out of here, working on myself, getting out of here. So getting some of that time cut, his thing was challenging me and asking me, what do I want to do to get better? So he started, what he did was he started Mr. Martin, which I really thank him a great deal because before then I was never a big reader. I was never a big reader. Reading, I used to read and it used to make me fall asleep.
Yeah.
But he said, well, you need to he told me he get you a job, get as many jobs as you can, because once you pass the test, then you can get a job. So I went and got a job in the kitchen. I went and got a job in the gym. So I was gone all day. I didn't have time for no trouble and nothing else. But the other most important thing was he told me, and after you get you some work, go stop by the library, and so he started giving me, he gave me my first book. The first book that he gave me was the autobiography for Malcolm X. And then he said, don't get books that's about junk. Get books that's about something. And so he gave me the autobiography to Malcolm X and told me to turn it in. And he said, after you finish that one, go get another one. He said, read about people that make an impact in society, people that's about something. This is the way he put it. People that's about something.
That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So after that, I think my next book, I got a book about Malcolm X, and then I got a book about Medgar Evers, and then I got a book about who was the next? I might have got
I think you mentioned
Angela
Martin
Davis,
Luther King.
Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
Angela Davis, just all of these influential people
Yeah.
that made a difference in society that that talked about change.
Yeah.
And then
And isn't it interesting how that starts to roll in your mind, and
It was a snowball
it
effect.
yeah, and it's so impactful to learn about other people's struggles.
Yes, yes.
To help you out of
Yes.
yours.
Yes, I started. You know what? That's true because I found myself reading. Here I am, a teenager, and I'm reading about the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Bless you. The history of your life, right? Of the people that have come before you,
Sacrifice.
right, that really does impact someone in their heart.
It did, and just an extension off what you just said, it really did start to, impact my heart because when I started learning about the struggles that people went through and, people that, went through so much in society,
Yeah.
whether it was water hoses or dogs being sicked on people or people that didn't have common, civil everyday civil rights and things like that, I started thinking that, looking at people and started saying that nobody is my enemy. And I no longer wanted to be involved in a gang. I no longer wanted to be involved in doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It impacted me that way.
What can you share for the listeners that you can tell the young people in Chicago and around the country that really you feel could impact them? What do you want to say about your life and what you think could help them?
Okay. What I feel and my mission and the way that I could help and impact and the advice that I would give to the youth in particular is my life. I want it to be a reflection and an example, should I say, an example of how you can grow up in tough circumstances and grow up with not the best of circumstances and things and challenges and adversity. And just because you are in that challenge and adversity or in a bad situation or a bad environment, you can make it out. You can change. You can turn it around. If you apply yourself, if you focus on changing yourself, if you take accountability for your actions, it's not going to be easy. It's not. It wasn't easy for me. So I don't speak from a person that's on a high horse or a person that's got it all together or a person that's never not made mistakes, because I have.
Right.
The thing about it was, I did not want to, like, I know people who did a lot more time than I did.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have done, a lot worse things than I have, and somebody would probably look at this and say, well, he didn't do 20 years, he didn't do 40 years and this and that. The unique thing about what happened to me is I want to put a spotlight on the fact that you can change. You don't have to keep going through the system. You don't have to, I got it the first time. That was enough for me. I could sit up here and make up some extravagant story that I did this and I was over here and I was over there. No, it is one time and one time only. I never went back into the system. I never got back into trouble. I got out and I turned my life around. I was dedicated because I did not like the embarrassment. I basically, be honest with you, I shamed my family's name and I did not like the way I felt. That felt to me to see the look on my parents' faces and to know. I found out years later that, talking to one of my siblings, how it impacted them, because when you get into trouble and you're doing time, your family is doing time with you. But I was not aware of that. And I would tell young folks, as much as you can, think about what you're doing before you do it. One instance in a split second, making a bad decision, emotional bad decision, and getting involved with the wrong things and the wrong people can change your life for the worse.
Yeah.
It can change.
That's really, really important that you said that it only takes one situation, one circumstance to change someone's life forever, whether it's they go to jail or they die, and how difficult it is for the family of that person,
Yep.
whether
Yep.
they're in jail or of course if they pass away, but you're taking your family with you. You're leaving them behind, but emotionally, that is really, really painful. So, and you took responsibility for what you went through.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that you came on the podcast to share your story. There's a lot more of
Yes.
your story. What email can people reach you at if they want to connect with you? Maybe you have you on one of their community events to share your story.
Uh, they can reach me at, and people want to reach me at, they can reach me at Freeman, Freeman, speaks, the number two, the letter U, at gmail.com.
Okay. Freeman
Speaks to
speaks
you
to you
at
at
Gmail.
gmail.com.
Correct.
And you will have a website coming up soon.
Yes, yes. I have a website coming soon. I had one set up, but I'm a sort of like a perfectionist, so I like things, really done. I like for things to be, really nice. So when they contact me, they'll know that I'm for real and I'm the real deal, and that I stand by what I do. My objective is to help do my part and reducing. Possibly reducing crime in the city. It's 37 this past weekend, 37 shootings and 7 deaths in the city. And if I could just impact, multiple, many, or just one person to help them think before they make a conscious decision, and I feel good about that.
Yeah, and I know you're doing that because I heard you speaking and it was incredible.
Thank you.
I felt emotionally connected to your story in that living in Chicago, unfortunately, and any in big inner city, this will happen. But there are resources in Chicago for youth. There are
Yes.
programs. There are internships. There's so many things that the city offers. And I know that hopefully on your website, you'll be able to share that as well.
Yes, yes. I'm looking forward to, being able to, hopefully inspire. My objective is to inspire, motivate, connect with the youth, the people in the city, to try to reduce, this as much as possible. Things happen, and you're never going to be able to stop everything.
Yeah.
But I think if enough of us get involved and each person does their part, and we come together as a community, all cultures, and just make it a universal thing to just bring down crime, bring down gun violence. That happened to be a part of my story, but I never forgot. I feel an obligation to give back to the community, to give back to the youth, to help reduce certain activities, and to give them some kind of inspiration that, hey, if I was living in Roseland, I was living in the Robert Taylor Homes housing projects in this, on the South Side, maybe somebody will look at me and see me as an example and say, hey, he done it, and he was a knucklehead like I am. He was, not doing so good. He didn't make the best decisions, but he's inspired me to do better.
So, what do you have coming up
Okay.
in the future regarding your speaking engagements or anything else?
So when I started out some years ago, my aunt was a special education. She was the special education director for the South Suburban School District. But since she's since retired. But before she did, she kind of plugged me in with different schools in the South Suburbs and in the city. So I had stopped doing speaking engagement for a while for personal reasons, but I've gotten back into it. So now I'll be speaking in schools in the South Suburbs, resuming speaking to schools in the South Suburbs and in the city. Throughout the city, I'm open for bookings to come out and do that, and it's just a really good. It's a really good feeling because I'm looking forward to that. Speaking to it's a purpose. My purpose. It's a God given purpose. I realize it is, speaking to youth, because of course you're not going to ever get everybody, but I get a really good response by talking to teenagers. I've been in schools where where the deans or the principals will say, hey, this kid or that kid, they don't listen to nobody, but they listen to your story and what and it impacted them. I've had kids come up to me afterwards and hang out and come to me and ask me to be their mentor and things like that. So it's a really good feeling. I'm looking forward to doing more.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You have that connection, right? You have an amazing story. I want to have you back on the show to share more of the story because there is a lot more.
Yes, yes.
Especially the parts where you've now stepped away from the negative situation and are now building a positive life.
Yes. Once I
which
came
is
home.
very important.
Yeah. Once I came home. Once I was paroled and I came home. It was a lot more challenges that came up that I'd love to speak on that.
I'd love that. I'd
elaborate on
love that because the problem is, unfortunately, sometimes people leave a negative situation. They decide they're going to do better, but then something impacts them that they don't. They fall back. And that's why your story is so important.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to come back and share that.
I would love to, because
thank
I
you.
had a lot of situations like that. So I would love to share those things. Not only the stories and what happened, but also how I the adversity, but also how I overcame them.
Yes.
And kind of maybe give the youngins something to strive for, on not only to hear the story, but how I navigated and took control of my life and decided that, hey, that I'm going to go this way. But yes, I got quite a few. I got few of those stories of adversity. It was more. It didn't stop once I passed the GED and I came home. Once I'm back in the same environment, what do you do now?
Yeah. The cliffhanger.
Yes.
I want you to share that. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, Freeman. It's been really, really great learning about what you're going through, what you've been through, and you're still going through, right? Because, life keeps happening.
It does.
And we have to keep fighting for what we want.
Yes.
In a positive way. And that's what you've done. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure having me, Dahlia. I look forward to coming back.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for listening today. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe so you can keep up with my latest episodes. You can find me on all social media platforms at Dahlia the Realtor. To reach me directly, call me at 773-879-4855. I'll see you on the next episode. Make it a great day.